We should put a
I wanted to be by the door in case I had to run out.
This is a non-violent crowd.
Yeah, the alcohol comes in on
This isn't the alcohol group. This is
You know, many a truth is told in jest, right? It really is a pleasure to be here, and it really is an honor to be here. I know that that there are many people in Clark County that share your thoughts, your concerns, your opinions about cannabis. And sure, relatively small group, small meeting, but no one should make the mistake of not recognizing the level of concern that many thousands of people in Clark County have about this issue. So it really is my honor and pleasure to be here. I don't have a canned speech for you. I don't like canned speeches. I think what I would like to do is just tell you a little bit about who I am and where I've come from, and I'll try to keep that brief, because I think by far the most valuable piece or portion of these kinds of meetings comes from the questions that are asked by the people in the group and the discussions that follow those questions. So I've been in Las Vegas since 1975. My dad took a job out at the Nevada test site when they were still doing underground nuclear testing out there. I started at 15 years old. We came here from the University of North Carolina, but prior to that I had been raised mostly in Texas. And I was in 9th grade. I started at Gibson Junior High School on Washington and Valley View. From there I went to Western High School, graduated from high school here in 1979, although I wasn't the best high school student. I didn't, you know, it was a really tough transition to make. Las Vegas was a really small town in 1975, and anybody coming in from the outside was ostracized, and you're a 15-year-old kid, and you know, you're kind of on your own, starting all over again. It was pretty tough. But I got it in my head that I wanted to join the Marines, and that gave me the incentive that I needed to, you know, continue doing the work to get the credits that I needed to graduate. I had to go to night school, take a couple classes at night, and so my diploma says Clark County Adult Evening High School on it. But most of my time was at Western. I joined the Marine Corps. I was 17, got my dad to sign for me. I spent 4 years in the Marines, came back here in 1983, and within a couple of months I was hired by the Metropolitan Police Department. Spent more than 30 years on Metro. During that time, raised a family like many of you have done. Got my bachelor's degree from UNLV. No, it is not in criminal justice. My undergraduate work is in psychology. Got a master's degree from the United States Naval Postgraduate School, and worked my way up through the ranks at Metro. And when I chose to leave in July of last year, I was the assistant sheriff for operations, which made me the #3 guy in the organization, and I had been in that seat for 5 years. So I know Metro and all of the little things that go on in the intricacies and the challenges and the politics and the good old boy stuff just as well as any of the so-called insiders at Metro do today. Now most of the political observers and pundits say they think I'm kind of an odd duck. They call me a former insider turned outsider. But the reality is that I worked. It's funny, isn't it? And the reality is that I worked hard inside Metro for a long time to bring about positive reform and change. And most of the work that was important to me and that I did with the community involved social issues, which is the reason that today I'm a registered Democrat in a wink-wink nonpartisan race. It is a nonpartisan race, but everybody wants to know what's your party affiliation. I'm a registered Democrat because starting back at the turn of our new century here, I did a lot of work with the mentally ill and in community in Las Vegas, because police encounters with the mentally ill very often result in violent outcomes. Police officers get hurt, people who are mentally ill get hurt, sometimes people get killed. Far too often, people who are mentally ill are killed by the police. So I started the first crisis intervention team in the state of Nevada. In 2003, we did our first class. We worked on it for probably since very early 2002. And as time went by, my greatest passion became reducing police use of deadly force. And that's an interesting conversation to have with police, because traditionally in policing, leaders as well as frontline officers like to look at police use of deadly force as something that's outside their ability to control. Look, you can teach us how to use firearms and teach us how to be safe so that we go home at the end of the day, but hey man, we can't control other people's behavior. There's nothing we can do about people being stupid, threatening the police with deadly force and so on. That's the argument that you typically hear. And it's a fallacy. It's completely wrong. It is true that, and I'm the first one to say it, in the vast majority of cases here, when our good police officers use deadly force, their actions were justifiable. Their actions were above reproach. Those aren't the cases that we have problems with or that cause us trouble. The cases that cause us trouble are the ones that fall outside that vast majority part. They're the ones where we shoot unarmed citizens, where we make bad decisions, we use bad tactics that put our officers into situations where they have to use deadly force, where they never should have been in that situation to begin with. So the truth is, we can reduce police use of deadly force. We can. There's only two ways to do it. The first way is what I'm getting at here, and it's through training. And it has to be innovative training, realistic, consistent. It's never a one-shot deal. You don't get your academy training and you're done. You don't go to some special class this month and you never have to go to again. The frontline officers have to go through realistic training that reflects the realities that they face on the streets on a daily basis. That the scenarios have to be designed based on things that have actually occurred in the policing world. Some here in Las Vegas, some in other jurisdictions. You get the point. And they've got to go every 3 months with the people that they work with. They've at least got to go once every 90 days back through an 8-hour training process that focuses on the importance of de-escalation tactics, the importance of making good decisions, using good tactics, not getting ourselves into situations that might result in us having to use deadly force unnecessarily, such as forcing entry into a residence or another structure when the only person in there is the person that we're involved with. There's no reason to make that entry. Things of that nature. So the training piece of it, and because here in Las Vegas is a different kind of town, isn't it? I've never met the person yet who says, nope, we're just like any other town in the United States. Is that person here today? I'd love to meet you if you are. There's something about Vegas that's different. It presents a uniquely challenging policing environment. That said, for that reason, we have to develop, implement, and support the most innovative, realistic, consistent training aimed at reducing police use of deadly force of any law enforcement agency in the United States, bar none. We have to work that much harder than everybody else. I told you there were two things. The second thing is appropriate accountability. When police officers make mistakes, and guess what? They do. They do make mistakes. And on occasion they do things they shouldn't have done. And sometimes those mistakes are minor, sometimes they're really major. Sometimes people die unnecessarily because police officers made big mistakes. On those rare occasions, we must take care of business. We must clean our own house, so to speak. Okay? I'll take it. Thank you very much.
More than a paid vacation.
Yeah, it should be more than a paid vacation.
because of the perception, as well as the reality that our officers here in Las Vegas use deadly force at rates that are higher than officers in many other communities around the country, including many communities that are very much larger than our own. We have to develop, implement, and fully support all the way to the top at Metro the most collaborative, meaning with the community, transparent, constructive, fact-based process for the review of those incidents of any organization in the United States, bar none. Common theme here, right? Have to have the best training, have to have the best accountability process. This is the only way for us to make it possible for our good cops to do a very difficult policing job here in Las Vegas. There's no shortcut, there's no easy way out. If the establishment candidate or the union candidate wants to tell you or our frontline cops otherwise, then I just believe they're not true leaders. they're not speaking the truth. There's no shortcut. Raising the bar for performance, increasing transparency, that's how we get it done. Lowering the bar of performance down here and protecting everybody every time at any cost is not the answer. I can go on and on and on about the challenges involved with police use of deadly force. I built during 2012 and 2013, completely overhauled and reformed Metro's internal use of force review process. And also, actually before the DOJ got here in 2012, I had started what's today called our reality-based training program, pick up the training piece. Both of these programs are very good foundations for Metro. In fact, the DOJ in September of this year recognized my reality-based training and the reformed internal use of force review process as milestones for the Metropolitan Police Department. But without honest, courageous, independent leadership at the top, in other words, in the sheriff's seat at Metro, none of that stuff's going to matter very much. Until you have a sheriff up there who truly puts the interests of the community first and is first and foremost concerned with doing what is right, no matter how hardworking and innovative the people in the programs at Metro, we're not going to get the organization where it needs to be. And I came face to face with this issue in July of last year. The board that I built, for the first time in the history of the Metropolitan Police Department, recommended the termination of an officer who shot an unarmed kid.
Yep, I remember that.
And now, as the chair of that board, I'm not a voting member, but I was there for 5 hours of hearing, heard all the evidence, heard the officer's own testimony, and I'm here to tell you, the 4 community members, and including the tactical review board, four commissioned internal members at Metro, some of the best and brightest at Metro, were exactly right when they recommended that officer's termination. They made the right decision based on the information that was presented. So when the sheriff and the police unions circled the wagons and said, nah, we don't have to follow the recommendation of the Use of Force Review Board, and there's nothing really anybody can do about it, that's when I realized I'd done everything that I could do on the inside at Metro. After 30 years and 2 months, my time there was up, and I quit. Thank you very much. Not looking for that. I made the only right decision any man could make in that situation, and I think many others would have made the same decision. I hope. That's kind of what got me where I am today. Interestingly, in that shooting, that kid was trying to hide a small baggie of marijuana from the police officer. And this is going to be a great segue into the rest of our discussion today, because enforcement of low-level drug offenses, particularly marijuana offenses, has become a very dangerous enterprise for the police in the United States and for all of the citizens that they encounter in that process. And people are being killed, people are being injured, and I'm talking about innocent people, as well as our police officers. The second thing I will tell you before I stop and go to the question piece is that I didn't support the so-called More Cops sales tax initiative. And there was one person from Metro, either active or retired, one person from Metro that stood up and spoke out publicly against that scheme at the county commission, January 21st. I did. And it's not that I don't support putting more cops out on our streets, right? Not to enforce pot offenses, marijuana offenses, but to help reduce violence, protect property, do the things that police officers in the United States really should be doing, right? And I'll support any reasonable, sustainable, ethical plan that will get that done, but I can't support a bad tax or a bad plan that creates more questions and more secrets than it does cops. And if I told you that this scheme that was presented by the current administration in conjunction with their outside consultant in January proposed to spend $65 million and promised to hire 101, I don't know why 101, but they were going to hire 101 police officers eventually. Wouldn't have been until sometime in 2015. 65 million bucks is enough to hire 540 cops. So where's the rest of the money going? That's number one. It's you know, watch this hand, you know? That's exactly right. Where's the rest of the money going? There was a lot of disinformation out there. It was just all around a bad thing. And the county commission did the right thing in not approving it. Now, we're going to have to take some steps within Metro to get our priorities straight, reduce administrative overhead, lean out some administrative cost centers. I'm not going to bore you with the details, although I could if you were that interested. And we have to deal with the police unions. And that's just the way it is. There are some long-standing sacred cow issues in that collective bargaining process. Until we increase costs and reduce costs and increase efficiency within Metro and deal with those long-standing issues in the collective bargaining process, we can't go to the funding bodies with a straight face and ask them to support additional funding for Metro, whatever the source. And I don't think, by the way, it should be from a sales tax, but whatever the source, we can't ask them to support increased funding until we fix those issues. We've lost the moral high ground at Metro. We've lost the faith and trust of our community. We've lost the faith and trust of the elected representatives of the community. And that's why we can't get the support that we need to do what needs to be done. At the risk of rambling on too long, I'll stop right there and we'll just jump right in.
Is there truth to the fact that the police department is funded federally based on the kinds of arrests or busts that you do, and there's a motivation based on this funding to go after drug arrests versus some other kind of arrest? How does the funding actually drive
Just wondering that.
the police department?
It is true. It is true that there are incentives, there are carrots that the federal government holds out. No matter what the states do, you all understand better than most, I'm sure, that marijuana is considered by the federal government of the United States to be a Schedule I drug. Possession of marijuana is a felony, according to the feds. And the most obvious way that the federal government uses local law enforcement to enforce drug laws is through asset and seizure forfeiture. And the laws that have evolved in the United States within the last 3 decades around forfeiture, seizure of property, right? Sale of, and then proceeds going to the agencies involved in the so-called, they're very liberal, they're very easy. We could conceivably take your car and your house and sell it and keep the money without ever charging you with a crime. So there's an interesting article in the RJ, I believe it's today, right, about the deputy up north that was stopping people out on a lonely highway up there. Okay, this is the main incentive. It's so through asset seizure forfeiture.
How do you counter that leverage? How does the state police department relinquish itself from that kind of coercion?
How do you get out from under it?
Yeah.
It's going to be a tough fight, man.
Because, I mean, you may have good ideas on running the police department. It seems your hands still could be tied based on what's happening above your head.
I mean, it's hard when you're getting federal funding for busting drug crimes to just say, you know what, we're going to focus on these other things when part of that funding now is endangered or cut off.
Well, you'd be surprised. I'll deal with it and then we'll get right back to you guys, because these are great points. All right. Now, is it going to be possible for one person, the sheriff of one law enforcement agency, to overnight unwind all of the complex pieces of this problem? We've come a long, it's 40 years in the making. 40 years and 40 million arrests later in this so-called drug war, right? Which got a real shot in the arm and a real kick in the butt after 9/11. We had even more excuse to take money and specialized military equipment from the federal government, most of which, in fact, I'd probably be okay to say all of which is employed not to make the homeland safe from terrorism, but to fight the so-called drug war, okay? All of these things, we're going down this road. We're still going down the road. The train's left the station. It's a heavy, big train. It's picking up speed. It can be stopped. First thing we got to do is stop it. Start slowing it down and bring it to a stop, and then we can start dragging it backwards. Day one, when I'm in that seat, day one, we will stop using high-risk raids and high-risk tactics to enforce low-level marijuana offenses, period, end of story. And again, I say this to a lot of people, whether they want to hear it or not. And trust me, there are a lot of people who don't want to hear this. But that's an inappropriate use of the local police, and it's just flat too dangerous. Okay, so that's one small step in one sheriff, right? But guess what? There are other sheriffs too around the country that are, the light's coming on, right? And they're starting to, one step at a time, one baby step at a time, they're starting to change policies and procedures. And we can make a difference. We can pull ourselves out from underneath. There's going to be resistance. People that benefit from the money that's generated by the drug war, and hey, it's not just law enforcement. In the drug abuse treatment and recovery world.
Yep.
Okay.
Pulls everyone into it.
Attorneys.
Okay. Right. That's right. Somebody mentioned attorneys, the criminal justice system. There's a lot to fight against, but that's not a reason to lose hope, because there's still a little spark out there of hope, and some people who see what needs to be done and are willing to fight that fight to get it done. It won't happen overnight, but we can make a huge difference just one step at a time. One of you two. Okay. I think you had your hand up first.
Okay. We were last talking about federal funding. The only way to fix that is to get restrictions on federal funding where they cannot refuse funding to anybody in particular. That's how we got in this mess in the first place. All right. Once we get more restrictions on how federal funding is distributed, we can work on where it needs to be instead of where it is enforcement.
Agreed.
All right. Now your police. I've been watching the police for 40 years. I finished high school in '69 and knew every damn cop in town because I was driving a Cadillac hearse. Everybody had to stop me and see what's going on.
If there, make sure no bodies in the back.
Well, since then in the drug war, all their excuses, they've been requiring less intelligence of the people that apply for the job and taking less intelligent people to fill the jobs. I propose we increase the intelligence necessary to be a cop. Please. At least half of you people are too stupid to be out there.
I appreciate the feedback, and I don't disagree with you. We start them very early.
And your training, right? Your training would help if they were more intelligent. They would catch more of it. They would stick with them more. Now the other thing, responsibility. Wouldn't a sure pocket camera fix that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think they've shown that
responsibility.
they've shown that when the police wear the cameras, there's like an 80% reduction in citizens' complaints against the police, and a 60% reduction of.
Preaching to the choir. I totally support the use of body cameras, and when I'm in that seat, that's the direction we're going to go, even if it means we have to go to court with the police unions in order to get a resolution there. But I do want to say, I agree in principle with what you're saying. Now, having spent more than 30 years on the Metropolitan Police Department, I know most everybody there, over 5,000 employees.
Yeah, that's got
and
big.
now and we can get into a discussion about organizations that get too big, right? Because I believe that any organization that's too big is inherently bad, and until you acknowledge that, you can't begin to take steps to correct it. But what I want to say about the men and women at Metro is this: the vast majority of them are outstanding people, and they're very bright people. And this isn't just a job for most of them. It's something they aspired to their whole lives. They really wanted to get out there and help people and make a difference. If I didn't believe that we didn't have a lot of talented and dedicated people at Metro, there's no way in the world that I could be fighting to get back in there as the sheriff to try to help move this organization forward, because I can't do it by myself. I'm going to be dependent on them to help me get the organization there. So we do have some that shouldn't be here. And I say this all the time, even the cops. I'll ask groups of cops, is there anybody here who thinks that just anybody off the street can do this job? I never get a yes to that. It's obvious, I'll ask them, isn't it, that not everybody can or should be doing this kind of work? They all agree with that. But they're so scared, and the culture's become so insular and so protection oriented that even they find it difficult to get rid of people they know really shouldn't be there. And that's what we've got to fix. That's what we've got to reach down, raise that bar. We've got to demand higher performance.
Yeah, when
and
I was a
greater
kid
transparency.
watching, it was cowboys and thugs, and yeah, you're right. The percentage of those kind of people have been lessened.
But another piece of it, just very quickly, is we hire these young people, many of whom again now have military experience, and the training is very simplistic. We don't ask them to really think at a higher level. We teach them how to point and shoot a gun. We teach them how to give orders and commands and things like that, and they do all that very well. It's not that they're not following their training, they are. The problem is their training is flawed, right? And so we've got to fix that. We've got to have training that focuses on teaching these people the value and importance and the how-to of basic communication skills, because a lot of that's been lost in this social media world that we live in. Yes, ma'am.
There's been a lot of talk, I think, from various candidates about when it comes to the sheriff. Okay, I've heard just like the county wants to say, well, tell the legislators to change it. It's not our fault. You know, I've heard sheriffs that have been saying, you know, well, I have to just enforce the letter of the law. That's all I do. I mean, how do you see a sheriff's position in the community? I mean, are there laws that you don't have to follow? What types of laws are they? Is it the letter of the law or the intent of the law, you know?
It's a cop-out when people say that. It's a cop-out because they don't want to answer a tough question or because they don't know the answer to it. Whether you're talking about immigration issues with a room full of Latinos, right? It's easy to say, well, that's the federal government. You know, we don't have any control over that. But the reality is, local sheriff can have a real impact on the problems that emanate from enforcement of federal immigration laws, can have a real impact on problems that emanate from enforcement of low-level marijuana offenses, on and on and on. We got to go a little deeper here with this question. Anybody that tells you that the police enforce all laws is not being honest with you.
Right.
We don't. There's no possible way we can enforce all the laws all the time, and we don't.
Right.
We pick and choose every day what laws we're going to enforce and what laws we're going to ignore. So as a sheriff, constitutional sheriff in Clark County, I believe, by the way, that sheriffs are the last bastion of defense for the American people.
Against?
Against an over-encroaching federal government.
Okay.
Amen. And so I'll take my oath of office and my position as a Clark County sheriff extraordinarily seriously in that regard. And no, we're not just going to go along and enforce whatever laws the federal government tells us to enforce. If there's a law that does not appear to be constitutional, we'll take steps to address that.
Oh, thank you.
And let's see, I think.
I have several points I'd like to address. First of all, I am the child of a police officer, a New York City Transit cop. So I grew up in the house of a police officer. So I have that type of retrospect when I post the questions that I'm going to post. First thing, I would really like to see a sheriff who is going to emphasize putting the servant back into public servant.
Thank you.
Too many of our police officers think that the public is there to serve them, and they look at it as though we are paying their checks, but they are controlling us and they need to hurt us. That's the thing that I feel. So that's the first point. My second thing that I would like to know from you is, even though we are looking here and I'm the darkest face in here, okay, we realize that those dark faces are growing at an exponential rate across the valley. How are you going to be interacting with the minority community? What is your outreach going to be like with the minority community to let them know that you are the chief public servant, so that they can feel more
Protected?
more at ease when dealing with police officers, so that they don't have to feel like when they're driving down the road and a police car pulls in front of them, that they need to be in a panic, even though it's a mother and her 3 children. Okay? Things like this, that's what I'd like to know. And then my last point
I feel
is
like that too.
the Strip. We are a town that is incredibly transient. A lot of money goes back and forth through that strip, through that corridor, and so therefore a lot of corruption goes back and forth through that corridor. I think that, yeah, the community needs to be policed, but we've got this huge highway in between that the community, depends on, we depend on it, but at the same time, there is a lot of corruption that I think is being turned. We don't want to. We can't look that way. We can't do that. So those are my things there. Those are my main concerns.
Okay, so service in policing, outreach, partnership, building strong relationships with communities of color.
Yes.
Right? And then what about the Las Vegas Strip?
Yes.
Okay? So, service. Why don't we start with the recent decision not to respond to property damage only traffic accidents?
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about that?
Good. That's nice.
I think it's trying to
it's terrible.
Good, because the day, some of you don't mind, it's not a big deal. The day I'm in that seat, we're responding to traffic accidents again.
Stop writing tickets.
Now here's why. Here's why. Because our culture at Metro, we don't even like to use the word service. We've convinced ourselves that that word has no place in policing. We don't serve anybody. We're crime fighters.
Yeah.
Okay? And so we've pretty much stopped responding police officers for all intents and purposes to residential burglary calls. Your house gets broken into, you're gonna have a hard time getting a cop there. If you do, you're probably not going
file a report. That's what they tell you.
you're probably
File a
not going
report.
to get the level of service that you would like to have there. You may get a public service representative or a cadet there on the scene. A police officer may stop by, but you won't have that officer that you really want to at that point in time. That's when you want a police officer to come into your life, help you restore some order, come in and reassure you, make you feel secure again after your house has been violated, calm you, take care of evidence, collect that evidence, and let you, if there's any chance of solving this, we're going to get it done for you. Talk to the neighbors, and we're not doing it.
No.
We don't do it when your car gets broken into.
No.
You'll go to a station or you'll make a report over the phone. If your business gets broken into, slightly higher chance that you might get a cop there to actually do the things that a business owner wants the police to do. And now, the last area where a citizen really wants to see a police officer. You've been in a traffic accident. You want to make sure that you're going to get this person properly identified who hit you. You want to make sure if you're not at fault, you've got somebody on your side that's going to document that and let the insurance company know so your rates don't go up. Now we've said no to that too. So we've pretty much abandoned every opportunity that we have to provide service to the most important people in our community, and that's law-abiding citizens who did nothing wrong, but they've been victimized. So everything's upside down. Service and law-abiding citizens are very, very low on our list of priorities. We're going to flip that around, and we're going to put them back up top where they belong. Okay, that's the service. This guy asked me 3 questions over here. Outreach to the African American community in particular, I'll tell you, I'm very strong there. And the reason is I built very strong relationships, particularly with the faith-based community and many citizens in West Las Vegas and North Las Vegas around youth violence reduction. I don't happen to believe in the gang enforcement model that is still in place in Las Vegas. I don't like to use the word gang. The most progressive organizations in the United States stopped using that term and started using more common sense, more illuminating phrases like networks of young men and things. That's really what you're dealing with. You're dealing with networks of young men with a lot of time on their hands that are getting involved in disputes over girls and turf and drugs and other things. And rather, this model that's in place of us aggressive enforcement followed by aggressive incarceration is completely broken. It doesn't work. This is where the school to prison pipeline terminology comes from. We've got to break the cycle, and instead we're just feeding it. We're driving a broken cycle. And believe it or not, also, reducing police use of deadly force is of great importance to the African American community. So, people in the African American community and in the Hispanic community have helped me more than anyone in my effort to reform police use of deadly force review within Metro. So I'll pick up right where I left off with the use of force review board that I built. I'll make some phone calls, and those people that quit after I quit, they'll come back. And we'll pick right up where we left off, and we'll restore this community's faith and trust in the actions, intents, and purposes of that board. We will go back to the table with this critically important issue of youth violence reduction that particularly impacts on communities of color so desperately hard. We talk about homicide rates in the United States are at all-time lows, you know. Pat ourselves on the back all day long, but when we zero in on communities of color, particularly African American communities, but increasingly so Hispanic communities, homicide rates for young African American males and young Hispanic males are through the roof. Sometimes many times over what the national homicide rates are. So I'll pick up with that work that I've already been doing throughout my career as a police officer. I don't have to worry now about coming up with some cool ideas to try to sell voters. These are things that have been important to me my entire career, that I've actually sacrificed for and worked on. These social issues are the reason that I'm a registered Democrat. I'm the most fiscally conservative candidate by far of any of the sheriff's candidates, including, they're all Republicans except me, but I'm far more fiscally conservative and far more so than the sitting sheriff. But when it comes to the social issues, that's what you're talking about, and that's where I'm at. And I'll pick up my priorities, not Washington, D.C., and I'm going to tell you something might surprise you. It's not the Strip either. It's our neighborhoods. That's my priority. Always has been. It'll stay that way. Last issue that you raised was the Strip. We have to police it. It's the lifeblood of the state, right? The gaming industry. It's important. But I'm not going to police it at the expense of our neighborhoods, okay? I have some ideas about how we can increase police perception down there. We can follow the example set in other major cities around the world. Travel, for those of you who travel to Europe, travel to Asia, when you go into those tourist districts, if you want a police officer, it's not hard to find one. You can always look for a flashing light. There's always a sign that says police. We can do some basic things like that. Plus, we're going to have a vigorous and robust reserve police officer program here. I've heard for years and years from other sheriffs that it just won't work in Las Vegas. We can't do that here. LAPD's got more than 300. Some of those guys, they're talking doctors, lawyers, engineers. These guys come in and work for free a couple of shifts a month because they get a kick out of it. Some of them have been there so long that they work by themselves. They don't even have to be with a regular officer anymore. Orange County's got a robust program. Phoenix does, and we will too. And we'll use that for initially will be to help police that strip so we can keep cops in the neighborhoods where the problems are. Okay? Got them all? And who was next? I'll get right back to you, dear. Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah, I actually was next.
Right.
You said that you know about all of the 5,000 officers?
Just about at one time or another, I've met almost every one of them.
Are there any of them in this room?
Not that I've noticed yet. There could be. There could be.
Okay, that was
Tell
my
me,
question.
come on, tell me now. You got
No, that was my question. Are there any narcs in the room?
I thought you were trying to trick me. Randy, you weren't on Metro, were you?
I'm not an art.
Okay. All right. So who was next? Wait. Let's go. Let's go right here. I think, and then we're going to go back to you, dear.
When we talk about the Strip, it reminds me that our police department is not trained on the medical cannabis program, in addition to some of the other entities, which isn't relevant to you. What is your feeling? We are going to send, I have an attorney's letter put together, and we're going to send an overview of the medical cannabis program to each of the entities that might come into contact with medical cannabis in any way, shape, or form, be it CPS, animal control, medical, fire, police. What is your feeling on the willingness of them to implement this into their continuous training programs? It's not gonna cost them anything, it would be just, if we provide the information as a community, it's being put together at this point, I'll be mailing it out when the time is right. What do you feel the willingness of the police department will be to accommodate the basic rules and outlines for any of your police department or marshals? I had a marshal at the city courthouse who was unaware of the medical cannabis program in Nevada. We've had many patients encounter police who have no idea that there is even a medical cannabis program in Nevada. So what is your feeling on their willingness to be trained on this so that
Should be a no-brainer, right?
Should be.
Right?
Should be.
All right, so I'll do you one better. You guys develop a short PowerPoint if you want to. Get a group of volunteers together. You'll go into every briefing room and you'll deliver the training to every cop yourself. If you need to know it. Yes, ma'am. Back here to you.
When it comes to the police raids, would you be opposed to holding the police officers personally, financially responsible for any damage that they do to a home that was completely unnecessary? We have people in this room who have been raided. They have came in, they have destroyed roll-laden shutters, they've broke windows from the inside, they've
Killed
left doors
holes
and
in
windows
walls for no
open
reason.
so that the animals could get out. They
Bill.
shot dogs, they broke the hip of a cat. Numerous things that cops
Don't mess with people's animals, man.
completely unnecessary.
So,
Mr. Moody, we are not MS-13. We're just a bunch of people that have found that cannabis works for us, sir. And we don't want to be dressing in orange, going to jail. We don't want to get shot.
Or animals.
okay,
We don't want the cops coming in because we're following the law and destroying our homes.
so I don't. Maybe if I stand on my head when I say this, you guys will remember it better. Something.
Most of the high-powered raids, but there's things that have happened already that they just seem to have this mentality that they can go into your home and do whatever the hell they want, not tell you why they're there or anything.
They can't.
No, we're still treated like
they
criminals.
They can. The courts have allowed it, condoned it. They're making it easier and easier for law enforcement to do exactly what it is you're describing. A lot of young people in policing today have never done it any other way, and that's frightening. That's really scary. But okay, and before here they come. Before I say this, let me tell you, I don't smoke cigarettes. I rarely take a drink of alcohol. Rarely take a drink of alcohol. Don't take an Advil or a Tylenol for a headache. I certainly have no interest in ever smoking marijuana. Okay. So I'm just being honest with you. My interest in legalizing marijuana is not so that me and all my friends can get together and smoke it. I don't get together with all my friends and drink. It's not me. My interest in legalizing drugs, many drugs, beginning with marijuana, has to do with the fact that I just don't believe that the government can or should be the instrument through which we met out morality to people. Okay? It's dangerous, it's expensive, and it's a failure. It doesn't work. So let's turn that issue back over to the medical community where it belongs. Let's get the police out of the business of enforcing morality. That said, with the introduction of a different culture at Metro with regard to drug enforcement, with regard to the so-called war on drugs, you're going to see those things begin to change. Number one, we're not going to be breaking down anybody's door to recover marijuana evidence. Not going to happen. Okay, so a lot of that stuff's going to go away. It doesn't mean the warrants aren't going to continue with regard to cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, other things like that. This is going to be a much longer battle over time to figure out what is the proper role of the police in enforcing even those laws. That's another discussion.
Thank you.
A lot of the things that you're talking about are going to go away as we start working on changing culture. All right, and it's not going to be an ask. so everybody's 100% clear. The day one that I'm in there, high-risk raids and warrants, use of SWAT teams to enforce low-level marijuana offenses goes away. It's gone day one. It's not a request.
To piggyback to that, I used to be in the auction industry, and I have found through the channels that when they have a police auction on drug seizures and all the stuff that's seized, that the police get first dibs on anything that is going to go up to auction before the public does. That is wrong. Everything should be bid on fair and square from the beginning, not officers coming in and going, okay, here's the minimum on this, you want it, you got it. There's a cop that has
Doesn't that give them an incentive to steal your stuff?
That's her point.
The $150,000 motorhome he got for $12,000. He's got Hardys, they got trucks, RVs, motorcycles, snowmobiles, all kinds of stuff that they've taken that may have been justly earned by somebody long before they got into trouble. And that needs to stop.
The policies prohibit LBMPD employees or their immediate families from participating in those auctions. Now, it doesn't mean that, you know, somebody doesn't call somebody up and say, hey, there's a great motorhome that's going to go up for auction, you know, make sure you're down there, at, you know, whatever. If there's a problem with enforcing those policies, if something that is going on that shouldn't be going on, then we need to take steps to fix it. And we will take those steps. This young lady had her hand up for a long time.
Well, actually, I was going to restate about what Cindy had said before about the law enforcement being, maybe there has to be a diversion off of marijuana, but you have to feed you have to feed something, like, why don't they go after crystal meth, like meth labs? I don't mind cops going after meth labs that are in neighborhoods. Or
how often do we find those?
I don't mind if you ban chocolate ice cream, just leave my vanilla ice cream.
Right. Thank you.
Exactly. Hold on a second. Human trafficking.
I agree, 100%.
I just want to know.
Well, like, hey, they didn't go after the drinkers, they come after the smokers. Now you're just.
Yeah, let's hear her out. Let's hear her point.
If I could just finish.
Okay.
I mean, I know.
We don't all have to agree on everything. It's okay.
But in order to get rid of cops going after marijuana, which seems to be a big major war out of everything. Even, I mean, I see it in the churches, I see it all over the place. There is a war against marijuana. I hear it all the time. But as far as the other drugs that kill you from the inside out, I don't mind cops busting and using excessive force to stop a drug that will kill our children and kill our teenagers and kill us.
And destroy
so
real estate.
if they could just diverge from the marijuana into the other parts like human trafficking,
Really?
Let's skip the excessive.
So I think I get your point. I think I get your point. But here's the thing. There's not going to, from my perspective as the sheriff, there's not going to be a trade-off. There's not going to be a compromise. We're just simply not going to be playing the marijuana game anymore. Period. End of story. I'm not making a deal with the cops that we're going to do more of this if you'll stop doing that. We're not doing this anymore. And the rest of the discussion about the larger discussion about drug enforcement and legalization, the same arguments, and I'll just tell you straight up in my opinion, the same arguments that apply to the drug war on marijuana, apply to the drug war on meth, and apply to the drug war on cocaine and heroin and everything else. Why don't we start looking at the abuse that's happening with prescription drugs? In 2007 in Clark County, overdoses from prescription drugs for the first time exceeded all overdoses from marijuana, from cocaine, methamphetamine, and heroin combined. As far as I know, there's not a documented case of an overdose of marijuana anywhere at all. So think about that for a second. 2007 in Clark County, more people died from prescription drug overdoses than from overdoses from cocaine, methamphetamine, and heroin combined.
Wow.
All right?
How many people have OD'd on marijuana alone? I'm not talking about a method that
None that I know of.
None that I know of. That just happens to smoke pot. Alone, like a pothead like myself. Yes, I'm admitting it.
None that I know of.
Okay, thank
Right?
you.
Maybe a Twinkie overdose or something.
Yeah, there you go.
I've heard that medical patients are being denied their Second Amendment right to get the medical marijuana card.
Yes.
They are, by
Yes,
the way.
we are. I had
They
my
are.
concealed weapons card taken away because I'm a medical marijuana patient. Everything was fine until I went to buy a handgun at the gun store in East Tropicana, which I've done business with plenty of times, and the owner refused to. He not only refused to sell me the gun, but he told me that I had to leave his store. And I was just like, whoa, I'm like, whoa, excuse me, what's going on? And why did you not sell me the gun? And they refused to tell me, and then escorted me off the property. And it took damn near me filing a lawsuit in order to finally get them to tell me, look, it's because you're a medical marijuana patient. And basically the answer that I got is, we do it because we can. And I think the Nevada Highway Patrol is actually the people who do the background checks, but if you become the sheriff, would you be willing to implement a policy that allows medical marijuana patients to receive their concealed weapons permits?
Protect ourselves.
If there's no other thing that would withhold them from getting the permits, because I don't like registering like a sex offender just to get my legally prescribed medicine.
Absolutely.
First of all, we have to go through fingerprint background checks and all kinds of bullshit to get my concealed weapons permit, and then for them to come back on me and say you can't do that gives me one option only, and that's to open carry like an asshole.
Hang on a second.
I don't know about that.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you see me riding down the street in my fucking Harley leathers, wearing my 6-inch Colt Python, which is what I carry,
You're perfectly legal to do
And
that.
you should do it more.
Unless you're under the influence
You
of
should
marijuana,
do it
then
more.
you're in trouble.
but what is under the influence? If I have a metabolite in my system, am I under the influence? Technically, by law, I am. So I'm not even under the influence, yet I'm under the influence. So therefore, now I'm under the influence of a narcotic substance while in possession of a firearm.
Okay,
which is
so,
exactly what I had to
listen.
deal with. I spent 2 years fighting the fucking court case over it.
In my opinion, there's no legal basis to deny a person a concealed carry permit who happens to be a registered medical marijuana user. So we wouldn't deny those applications on that basis alone.
Happens every day.
You can't do it. Not going to happen. It's a lawsuit waiting to
Well, it's
in the state legislation.
It's written in the legislation for the medical marijuana program.
that you can't be in possession of a firearm under the influence of marijuana.
Or carry a concealed weapon permit.
Under the influence of marijuana, right?
So
It doesn't say that if you're a registered card holder, you can't have a CCW.
But by being a medical card holder,
You can drink beer.
The way the law is
He was
written,
trying to say that he would
you
change
don't
that,
have
right?
to be
Yes.
technically under the influence to be in violation of the law.
We're all
You have
positive right now.
a
We're not,
level of
none
quote
of us are.
metabolite. Now, I could have smoked
But
cannabis.
that only applies to driving a car, though, right?
That applies to possession of a firearm also, because you
Same
guys
drive, is it the same
You only
standard?
have one pass.
only
Actually,
because
guys.
you have the
Hey, that's
ability
hard
to
to say that.
only
apply
because
to
you
you,
have the
guys.
ability to forcibly draw my blood.
Exactly.
And
You
my
have the
last-
ability
So you can
to
force-
forcibly draw my blood in order to find out whether I'm guilty or
Hold
not.
on, let me chime in on this one, please. Routinely, when Metro goes in and finds marijuana and gun in the same place, and even if the person is a registered medical patient, along with whatever other charges they are levying, they levy NRS 202.360, which is unauthorized person in possession of a firearm. And it is the rationale of Metro, because the law says you're not allowed to possess a firearm. NRS 453 says while you're under the influence, but 202.360 says you're not allowed to possess a firearm if you are addicted to a substance. And the police say you've got a medical marijuana card, therefore you're addicted to marijuana, and so you cannot have a firearm.
I
And
see.
they
That's how they
routinely
deny me to say, oh my god.
Education is
that felony.
imperative.
That's how they deny me to say, oh
Marijuana,
my
there
god.
is no addiction.
You might say I'm addicted to food. It makes me feel good.
But you can have a prescription of hydrocodone, and that's no problem.
Because law enforcement does not consider that to be an addiction unless there's a clear
Here's my concern,
abuse factor involved.
Mr. Moody, my concern is if I'm riding down the street in my motorcycle and I am open carrying legally, as you say, and I'm also carrying my marijuana legally, as you say, or as we say, under 453 and all that nonsense, and I get stopped by one of Las Vegas's finest, and they decide to choose to
Hold their
enforce
guns
one
up.
law and not the other, as you so say, I am now, like, there's no affirmative defense for me until I'm arrested, incarcerated, bail myself out, and then have to prove my innocence. Rather, you know, I'm
Beat the
guilty
rat,
until
can't
proven
beat the
innocent.
right.
Yeah.
But I've been
Yeah.
guilty until
True.
proven innocent numerous
Well,
times.
that's the justice
And we're
system,
not
isn't
just
it?
because we're
I mean, I don't want to
patients.
say just like a kid, like it sucks, but it sucks. You
It
know?
sucks. I wake up in the morning with more cannabinoids in my system than the average, than the
So it's
tourist
gonna
who
go
might
back
smoke
to Cindy's
occasionally.
question earlier, and my answer to it. It's gonna be about, there are a lot of layers to this onion that we've got to start
Yeah.
peeling back, all right? And it's a the culture that exists today is driving all these problems.
Yes, sir.
If cops aren't worried about enforcing low-level marijuana offenses, a lot of these things evaporate, right?
Until they see a gun.
Yes, sir.
Well, you know
But
what?
there's
No,
only so much
listen,
you can do.
I'll tell you guys a story. The open carry thing became a big problem for the Metropolitan Police Department about 2-3 years ago. All right, and some of the guys in the open carry world, they believed that their constitutional rights were being infringed upon, and so they wanted to push the issue so that it would wind up in the courts and they could get a resolution. And I was in charge of patrol then, right? So one of these guys in particular is a guy named Tim Farrell. Do you guys know Tim? Anybody know Tim Farrell? A real informal leader among the open carriers here in town. And so I wanted to know who is this guy? You know, is he really a believer in the Constitution? And is he really leading this quasi movement because he wants to see the Constitution upheld and citizens' rights intact, or is this just about getting attention and making trouble for the police? So I figured the best way to find out was to go ask him. So we met at a Starbucks and talked, and that became the first of many subsequent meetings. And I found Tim Farrell to be a very good man, an honorable man who really does believe in the Constitution and is only interested in making sure that citizens of the United States, and particularly here in Clark County, had the right to carry firearms guaranteed to them under the Second Amendment. All right, so we put together a pretty intensive training program for Metro officers, and I can stand here with confidence and tell you that for handguns, the open carry issue is almost a non-issue
Awesome.
in the jurisdiction of the Metropolitan Police Department.
Good.
If somebody calls right here now and says, hey, there's a guy sitting in Coffee Bean and he's got a gun, and I don't see a badge, the cops aren't going to come. The dispatchers have been trained. They're going to ask you, what's the person doing? Is he threatening anybody?
Good.
And if the answers are no, they're not going to send an officer. They're going to say that's not a violation of the law.
That's awesome.
Now, so this is an analogy. The same kinds of things have to happen with drug enforcement, and it's going to take time and it's going to take education. Once the handgun issue wasn't getting a reaction from the police anymore, some people in the open carry world, not Tim Farrell, came up with another idea. They said, well, look, let's try this. Let's see what they'll do if we walk down the sidewalk with an assault weapon. So you had guys now get out AK-47s and AR-15s and just start walking through neighborhoods, and nearby would be somebody with a camera, right? And the first couple of times it happened, they got what they were looking for, right? Because in our world today, with all the mass shootings that go on around the United States, these weapons, the AK knockoffs and the AR knockoffs and all that, the assault type weapons can cause just a devastating amount of damage in the public space. They're very dangerous, and that can happen in a matter of a few seconds. And so we're concerned about it, right? So I went back to the open carry people, and I said, this presents a problem for us. And I had this conversation with Tim and a couple of his buddies. This presents a problem for us because, yeah, you've got the right. You're not breaking the law. You can carry this thing openly down the sidewalk. But most people in our society today still find that not to be acceptable behavior, and they'll call the police. You go walking down your sidewalk carrying a long gun, and the calls are going to start coming into 911, right? And they want the police to go and talk to the person and say, who are you? What are you doing? Where are you going with the gun? And I said, Tim, if you guys cause the police to hesitate in these situations and not do what society expects us to do, what the community expects us to do, you could be responsible for massive loss of life if one of these people turns out to be an individual that's with bad intent. They worked with us, we solved that problem. All of these things can be solved with communication education.
Last thing I do you?
Okay. Do we get any more?
Is it true that you don't have to carry your blue card anymore if you have a handgun? I heard that you no longer have to carry a blue card.
It's not true.
That is not true? Okay, I heard that from a dispatcher lady.
They're still enforced.
You mean a weapon that's required to be registered?
Yes, sir. If I'm carrying a pistol, do you still have to carry a blue card with it?
I had not heard there's any change to that.
Okay.
But would you change it?
Huh?
Would you change the blue card system?
Is that what you were going to ask me?
No, but it was a really quick question. Sorry.
What is it?
Okay, my question was just from what we're talking about. I wondered to what extent some of these things are actually the justice court or the courts as opposed to the police. And do you have any effect on the courts and what the courts do, or is it mostly just keeping those cases from getting to the courts?
And you're talking about in the case of
all of these
low-level marijuana offenses.
And then there's the whole traffic thing. I work at an attorney's office, and I see all the time these people that they get these warrants, and it's perpetual. Like they'll never get out from under it. There's nothing you can do, and it's ridiculous.
Yep.
You know, I mean, but that's the courts at that point. You know, is it just keeping it from getting to the courts because you can't control the courts? I mean.
Well, the police are capable of
technically, the law enforcement can't control the courts, okay? But this is one of those opportunities for a cop-out to say, oh, it's not my problem, somebody else's problem. What we can do, our jails we have 2 jails, and they're full. They're already full. There's no room in the jail to house somebody who's got a traffic warrant.
Yes.
Or that's in possession of a small amount of marijuana. And so I think we're rapidly approaching, the sheriff runs the jail. So we're rapidly approaching the point at which the sheriff, that will be me, is going to have to say, the only misdemeanors that we're going to book into the jail at all are going to be domestic violence, are going to be DUI, and a few other categories of misdemeanors that involve violence or some imminent danger to the public. And the rest of them, we're going to have to do something else. I'm sorry. But that'll be a huge change for law enforcement officers in Clark County because we're used to booking everybody for everything anytime we want to. And there's no more room and there's no more money to do it.
All right, you guys, what's the last question?
I have to answer this young lady's question when she comes back. I don't want to avoid the blue card question. But go ahead, sir.
I'm hoping through our discussion, maybe you got some new points that had not been brought up before for you to think about and what you could do. I just wanted to add my story to the gun part. I do not own a gun, but went to go get one for the first time, and I was denied to get it. And the only thing that came back at the gun thing was that I have involvement with a controlled substance. Which I have to think is federal. I don't know where they got that. If the state is not giving out the information that knows I'm in it, I don't see why I would have been denied or how they would have known. That was the only reason. And now I'm not a gun owner because I'm denied.
You guys, we have another speaker.
We do.
Oh my goodness.
But I'm gonna ask for a right for a last question.
What's the last question? About
well,
a narc?
Actually, I've got to say that as you've been talking, I've got about a dozen of them now. However, I'm willing to hold off on most of them till you appear on our radio show, and we'll devote a full hour to you and get you out there and reaching out to these people because these are important issues. And I think things of substance have been said here, and we want to get it out to a much wider audience.
Yeah, let's do it.
I like what you have to say.
We're up against a very strong establishment here in Clark County. It's going to take each and every one of you and everybody you can muster to overcome it.
Okay, so then I'll skip all my important questions. Okay, and part of what Cindy talked about, I was the victim of a raid 6 nights after going on face-to-face, wherein, a violent SWAT raid, 2 APCs, half a dozen police vehicles, 20 cops, all that sort of stuff, got arrested, charged with 3 felonies, which were dismissed because there was nothing in my house. They had absolutely nothing, but they did massive damage, and it's something that 2 detectives could have just knocked on the door and done for much less
What were they
cost
well,
to the
maybe
county. Pot. I'm involved in the movement. They were convinced I was growing pot or had pot there or whatever, and it was completely wrong. But so absolutely, what Cindy is saying happens, and working